you guys. We're here today with a special guest, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Heidi. I am the naturalist with Floyd County Conservation. All right, and we're going to go on a little hike of the prairie here, and I'll show you some of the wildflowers and give you some more information on them.
Awesome, so let's get started.
All right. So not only do prairies have really cool plants that are adapted for living in Iowa, but there's also a lot of animal species that are adapted for them. And this here is a bluebird box. And bluebirds like to actually build their nest inside of a structure instead of just on a tree branch. And so they don't mind being disrupted. I always knock to make sure nothing flies out. But you can actually see, I'll just mop, that this one has a nest in it. And it looks to be either a tree sparrow or a bluebird. It's kind of hard to be able to tell the difference without the eggs in there. But you can see how it's built up. The important thing if you have a birdhouse in your yard is to make sure to clean them out every year. After the birds leave, you can clean them out. You can even leave the doors open. That way mice won't spend the winter in there, and then you'll have to kick the mice out in the spring. But bluebirds around will help to keep the insects down, and they are just a fun bird to watch. All right, so in July is when a lot of the coneflowers will start to bloom, and this one is called the gray-headed coneflower. It's just starting, so you can see how it will have yellow petals that kind of hang down. They almost look like a skirt that's hanging off of a lady. And this here will be the gray head to it. And it'll actually turn into the seeds later, which birds will love to eat all fall and winter. And if you were to crush the seeds, they actually smell like a citronella candle. So they kind of have a lemon lime smell to them when they're ripe. All right, so imagine going to school and having to walk through this prairie and not be able to see your way through it. Typically, the prairies in Iowa would have been 6 to 8 feet tall, and the roots go down 10 to 12 feet. So that's why they can be green in the heat of summer when the grass in our yards is brown and crunchy. A lot of farmers back in the pioneer time would have dragged a log or something to make a path through the prairie, so that way the kids wouldn't get lost on their way to school because there weren't sidewalks and obviously buses in order to get you there. A couple more flowers here blooming. This one here that looks like a little daisy is actually called daisy fleabane, and you can see how it has really fine petals. This purple one here is a favorite to a lot of the pollinating insects. It's called bee balm or monarda. It kind of has a minty smell to the leaves, but a lot of the butterflies and bees like to get their nectar from it because their mouths, which are kind of like a straw, are able to get down into each tube of the flower petals and be able to drink the nectar. Nectar to a pollinating insect is kind of like Kool-Aid to a kid. So plants sometimes have really neat names. This one here is called Rattlesnake Master. And these are actually its flower, which will actually dry into a pod. And the Native Americans believe that if you put these pods in a little pouch around your neck, that it would help to keep the rattlesnakes away. Obviously it's worked pretty well for me because I've never seen a rattlesnake. And these plants also are very adapted for living in Iowa. Think about these hot sunny days when a lot of plants will dry out with their leaves. Their leaves are really thick, almost like a yucca or like a cactus. They're really thick and waxy, which helps them to be able to survive the heat. Because living in Iowa in the summertime, plants have to be very adapted for our heat and sometimes lack of water, which the prairie does naturally. All right, a couple other really interesting prairie plants. This one here is black-eyed Susans. A lot like the flowers that you'd have in your landscaping of your yard. In fact, a lot of those plants would have started out as native species, and we've just changed them and made them prettier and be able to handle it. But black-eyed Susan, and then this one here is called thimbleweed. And this is kind of the seed flower head, and it will, when the seeds are ripe, it'll become cotton-like and fluffy, and the seeds will disperse in the wind. And these yellow flowers are called an oxeye sunflower. In the prairie, there's a bunch of different kind of sunflowers. These are the oxeyes. Later in the season, we'll have the Maximilian sunflower. The cool thing about prairies in Iowa is one flower takes over after another and after another. So right now, as you look around, it's a lot of whites and yellows, but it will have gone through its orange period, its purples, and so every time you come out to a prairie, you'll have something different to look for.
That wraps up our Prairie Walk for today. Thank you, shout out to Heidi Reams, the naturalist out at Floyd County Conservation, for being our special guest today. And you guys stay tuned, and I'll see you in our next video.